Welcome all. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Our next presentation is the Ancestral Gardens in Woodside, St. Mary, Sacred Tourism, a mighty long way to go. Like all the other concurrent sessions, it was pre-recorded and will be followed by a live Q&A with our panelists. Our presenters really do love questions, so please use the chat or raise your hand or pose a question in the Q&A section. We'll now get started with the presentation.
Today's panel, my name is Gabriel, and our panel today will look at the Ancestral Gardens at Woodside, St. Mary. And our title is Sacred Tourism, a mighty long way to go. And we have a panel that will speak from different angles on what we have been doing at, pardon me, at Woodside. And there we have Dr. Erna Brodber, who is in a lot of ways our griot, our muse, our leader. We have Cacique Kalan, and we have Claire Bell Lewis as persons who will talk about what is it that we have been doing at the Ancestral Gardens in terms of preserving and unearthing. Dr. Brodber will do a presentation now, and after that we will have Cacique and then Cleo. At the end, I will just come in to ask if there are give a summary and ask if there are any questions.
You haven't started yet.
All right, no. Yes, how became heritage sites. I made my little bit of living from going from time to time to universities in the States to teach for short periods of time. And one or two universities wanted to come back with me to take their students on their rural experience. And when the students came for their rural experience now, one of the experiences we gave them was going and looking at our heritage sites, and I would give them the history behind these sites. That was a way of giving them the history of the place. And it struck us that we were having something called a community tourism product. And there are fellows who were taking these tourists out, school tourists out, and earning a little something. And it struck us that we could make this into something bigger. Not just these students, but make it a tourism point. But to do that, it struck us, we would have to make these sites that we have. We would best make these sites we have into institutionalized sites by making them heritage sites. The head of the organization at the time was very, very useful and very helpful. He came down here, he came down here and looked and he said, no, you have a choice, you could either make these sites real heritage sites, or you could make the whole village heritage sites. Tell me what you want. And it seemed to make sense to have the sites rather than the whole village. So we had these 4 sites, and we started working along with the Heritage Trust, making our applications, and Heritage Trust came down. And eventually in 2015, they said, yes, these deserve to be national heritage sites. And so that is how they became national heritage sites. In the process, we also learned that one Bobby Susan is not just one Bobby Susan. She is the mother of Yokahu, the chief god of the Tainos. And so we had her. We realized that we had something great here. And people were starting to come and look at her. And that helped us to consider that we really had something worthwhile, something worth being a historical being our historical site. So that is the story of how we became historical sites. All right. Well, I think everybody knows by now of my desire from I knew myself to raise the standard of the people who came from Africa over into the New World. That's my baby. They've been my baby. That is, we have been my baby, and that is where everything starts. But there are two other parts of history which are important to this business. One of them is my leaving the University of the West Indies, where I had a salary and where I was teaching and doing research. And the second part of it is my coming down to my native village to live, to build my house and to live among the people down here. Those two things are important. And another important piece is my fellowship in the medical school at University of Washington in Seattle. It's very important because it was there on that fellowship, that year's fellowship in psychiatric anthropology, that I became involved with something called social and community psychiatry. Social and community psychiatry. So when I departed from the university and when I came down here to live, what kicked in for me in my mind and in my possibilities and my interest in my own people was how can I use my knowledge of community psychiatry to do community development down here. I was helped by the youth club, which said they needed my help, and I told them that they could have what was in my head and we could work together, and that was it. So we started working together, reading things about ourselves, and they continued to want things about themselves. And the notion came up that the more you know about yourself, the more you can change yourself, the more you can help yourself. So the notion of social change through knowledge, self-knowledge, was paramount to me and paramount to us. And we made all sorts of efforts to know about ourselves. We read books. We had people come down here to lecture to us and all the rest of that. And then it so happened that somebody came here and did a talk on St. Mary. And people were so interested in that talk and couldn't move that it struck me that what we could really do is to look at our history, since it is galvanized everybody else, including ourselves. Let us do a history of this village. And in doing the history of the village, we learned several things. We learned about the function of Daddy Rock, how Daddy Rock had functioned in the history of this village. We learned from reading as well, we learned about what we then called One Bobby Susan. We read about the work that was done that talked about One Bobby Susan, an anthropologist, an American anthropologist in the 1920s, wrote a book called Black Roadways. And for some reason, she talked about Woodside. She talked about Woodside and One Bobby Susan and stuff like that. And if she could write about that, an American anthropologist, then it behooved us to know about it, for it was ours. And there were several other things. Well, I mean, of course, the church, which we were told used to be the slave master's house. And that's 2 and 3. Well, there are several other ones which haven't been looked at, because we know about a site on the way up to Janko Hill, which is supposedly called Revival Ground, consecrated ground, where the enslaved people used to meet and have their meetings. More recently, we also know about a hill just across from Miss Pearlie. Up at that hill, people told us, was the first church, and that was a church that was built by the people themselves. And I could substantiate that through the archival information. More recently, I've learned that that place is called, not Consecration Hill now, Christian Mount. So there are all these things that have not even been looked at yet, that we haven't used as yet. Okay. So to come back to Daddy Rock, one of the things we did, having heard what the function of Daddy Rock was, and having decided that we would celebrate Emancipation Day, we decided that the thing that would have happened in 1838, the real Emancipation Day, was that enslaved people, our people, would have sat down and said, hey, what are we going to do tomorrow? How are we going to live? How are we going this? How are we going that? They would have been questioning and thinking out their business. And it behooved us, their descendants, on this day to sit down and think about what we're going to do about this, what we're going to do about that, because there were several things pertaining to us that required concentration and thought, that what we should do, as they had done more than 100 years ago, was to do the same thing. So where would we do it? We would do it at Daddy Rock, where we heard that they had done it. So Daddy Rock became more important than any other site because of a particular history of a place where people sat down and thought out things. So we went to Daddy Rock to sit down and think out things. In the meantime, I'd been doing the history of the village from archival sources as well as from the memories of the people in the village. And I wanted to incorporate all of this, a new kind of history, incorporate the teller in the tale as well as the tale itself. And so what we did was to have Emancipation Summer School, where we focused on the people who were, the records showing out, were enslaved in this village. And we made stones. We know they didn't have any, everybody these days get buried and you have a little plaque somewhere and a grave. This grave is not even stone, it's not even earth these days. Have a stone, what do you call it again? Anyhow, it's not just grave these days, it's all stone. So we decided to give these enslaved people stones, and we chose the mothers, 5 or 6 mothers, to do these stones, and had the children who bore their names in the summer school do varnish the stones and cut out things from the newspaper, letters from the newspaper, to form the names of these people. And we had a ceremony in 1999 where we had a sort of wishing well kind of thing done by somebody who was at the head of the art school in Edna Manley, and who was K Hamilton was her name, and who was a descendant of Africans enslaved in this place. But Kay came and did the wishing well, and what we did now was to put the stones in this wishing well, so that the stones were there. But varnished stones and varnished paper can't live long. So we said, this is still important, but the history and the recognition we're giving to these people can't go along any further. What do we do? So we said we would look for funding to create something more substantial. And so we sat down. I was then the president of the Education Committee. The Woodside Community Development Action has a number of committees. One of them was the Education Committee. One of them was like the committee that looked after the Care Committee. We had Entertainment Committee. We had 7 committees. And I was the head of the Education Committee. As the Education Committee head, it was my business to see to it that some more substantial recognition of the past be done. And so I set out to do this project, but I'm no good at project writing. So I called in my friend Bonnie Heron, who was very happy to do that. And together we wrote this project and did all of the accounting and all the rest of it. And then we sought funding. Wrote up a nice project, and had the president take it to, I forget the name of these funders. The funders, can you remember the name? No, they are very popular. I mean, everybody knows the name of them. It's like a sort of government place. I just forget the name of it anyhow. we had sent the project to them, and they said they quite like it, but it is too late. The arts part of it, which is where we would fall, has already passed. Chase fund, okay. So we sat down to rework it and to send it to another agency. Well, before we could send it to another agency, we got a call through Miss Allen saying that here is another agent that might be interested in your project. And we hurried up and got the project ready in time for this other agency, which turned out to be the cement company. And happily, the cement company, we were shortlisted, and cement company interviewed us. And at the interview, I was quite sure that I had let Woodside down, because I was quite sure that what I had said, I didn't see any spark in the face of the 12 people around the table, me alone, and no spark at all. So I was very ashamed and embarrassed. And well, anyhow, as it turned out, they called us and asked us to prepare a video, which we couldn't do because we didn't have anybody who was willing to come and prepare a video for us. The people who said they would do it did not do it. So the agency had to send somebody down. It's when they sent somebody down that I said we couldn't be so bad. We must at least come second or third for them to spend so much energy on us. And then when we were invited to come to the handing over of the money, I noticed that we were asked, other people were asked to send 2 people, and we were allowed to send 10. I said again, we come very high, we must come very high. And then, as it turned out, we not only come high, but we come highest. So the agency decided that we are the first, our project was the one they wanted to work with. And then the whole business of getting permission from the church, the thing belongs to the Anglican diocese. Getting permission from the church was a very difficult thing. We spent days sitting down, like we were waiting for the vote in the 1960s in America. I sat out several days of the Archbishop. Then, as it turned out, there are many people who we knew, or who my family knew, or some other people knew, and this is when I understood how things go. There are people who pushed, and then our reverend here took on the project. He really took on the project because he knew the inside workings, and he organized for a meeting with the Archbishop, and so we got that. Then the other thing now was the Heritage Trust, which already knew that we were important, but their importance means that they will have to tell you what stone can be moved and what stone cannot be moved. So it was another long process of dealing with them, getting several different photographs of this and photographs of that, and they're coming down at their own time, although the cement company would say that this has to be finished by the end of the year. You have to have everything in. Well, fighting up with them, we eventually got permission. Then there was also the parochial board, the parish council that we had to get permission from, and that was another business of getting. So finally, we got all of these things together, and the cement company came down and did, and I'd like to say, the cement company thankfully did not give the money to anybody in Woodside to do it. The cement company came down and did it themselves. Amen. Thank God. Though there are people who still believe that money give out and they never get any. And it would make more sense for them to get the money than that the money got put on at Daddy Rock. There you are. About Woodside, let me start by telling you that Woodside is my heart.
Woodside is in St. Mary, deep rural community. Approximately around 1,000 people living in Woodside. Mostly middle age. It's a farming community.
Woodside is really a warm and a friendly environment and a very peaceful community. As people coming into Woodside, you can just expect fruits, you name it, country. That's country stuff, you know? And then you can expect history and culture. So we have students come here on tours, university students and visitors, people doing history, doing research and like family tree, you know, and some of them find out back their family were right back here from Woodside, from this very plantation here. This plantation was one of the largest plantation of coffee growing in this region in the days of slavery.
We have 4 historical sites here that are protected by the National Heritage Trust. This is the former great house of the slave master. Steps down here, those are steps which were carved out by the Tainos. One Bobby Susan, which we have now learned, is called Atabey. But I have yet to hear about sacred tourism. And this is what we are. This is a sacred space that you are in. Down there, Daddy Rock is a sacred space, sacred to the Africans. It's very important that she's Atabey because she's the mother of the chief god who is Yokabu, and she is the goddess of the Earth Mother. So we have her here in Woodside. And there's steps here that are sacred to the Taino. I'm telling you that we have Taino from Puerto Rico, and we have Taino from Florida coming to see these things. And you would cry when you see how they behave, how they love us because they say we took care of their relics.
The church can tell the production that was taking place. That was the home for the slave master. And then it was given to the community for a school, and then it became a church. The same organization built us a school over there, which is closed now. And I see it to use fit as a perfect camping site for this area. Because we have a lot of high schools in this community. We're doing cadet drill and all of these things. Back then we was told that here was the era where the slave used to plan their escape.
Annually, we come down here to really have a reading session on the 31st of July, leading into the 1st of August when it was Emancipation celebration. The slave would come here to really discuss their own private business, leading up to that impending event that will be the Emancipation celebration. So we find it possible that annually we'd come here, have a reading session.
These plaques here bear the name of some of our slaves that were here on the plantation.
Well, the future plan for Woodside, you saw it down there. Since 2006, we determined that we would make use of our historical sites. We would care them so that we could present them in our educatourism product, looking much better, and we would also be teaching people more about them. Well, that needed funding. That is not something we could do by having a dance. And then the cement company last year put out an advertisement for community development projects. And we applied, and we came first, and we got the $6 million. Not in our hand, because they are doing the project, but that is our project there, the Ancestral Garden.
So we can have visitors who come here and then we exchange, cultural exchange. We can exchange with food, we can share with rivers we have here and different. We have caves and all of this. So here in Woodside, really, it's environmentally friendly.
I'd like to tell you about when Wilmer's Boys School came here. I do not know if you know custard. You know coconut custard? Well, they got roast yam and coconut custard, and they were all, wow, we want more, what we want. Tell us how to make this. We want our mother to make. You can imagine mother making in Kingston, mother making this for them Wilmer's children. But anyhow, that's the kind of excitement that comes with coming here.
Osa kasi like kono. Good day, my people. Niborish kai mandiri. Kasi kayo kaya giyame wani daka. Ikonya wakia yaka wamun waperito, wailino, akia Woodside yukun. Today we are here to speak about our ancestors, to speak about the future generation, and about the Woodside community. Now, my involvement with the Woodside community is connected to my Yame Taino, my Taino ancestral connections. And this community is one that is very proud of their Taino sites and ancestral history that is connected to the first people of our island. They invited me to do an ancestral ceremony to honor the creation and the opening of the Ancestral Gardens around the area of Daddy Rock. And there's also been ceremonies there at their other ancestral Taino site, which a portion of it is depicted behind me, which is the Atabey site, which was previously known as One Bobby Susan. I'd like to speak towards the concept of indigenous and ancestral tourism, which is something I said that has not really been tapped into a lot here on the island. We have our sites, we have spaces that we have access to that have this rich history. And I think that there is room and space for support of this type of tourism, this type of acknowledgement of our ancestral ways. Jamaica is one of the few islands in the Caribbean that retained its ancestral name. Jamaica coming from Jamaica, and one of few that has such strong retentions, even though there's not much information surrounding them. A part of the work that our community does is to preserve and promote that information, and we started a lot of that work with Woodside. We handed over to them a detailed catalog of the ancestral names of herbs, plants, and medicines, so that these can be a part of the ancestral garden that will help to cultivate in the mindset of those that visit the site that this is land that has always been utilized for medicinal value, for the upliftment of community, for honoring of the elements. In this period that we're living in the world today with climate change and all of these various aspects, I think it's good for us to have spaces where we can focus on learn from the ancestral wisdom that has allowed our communities and our people to survive into current society. And the support and assistance from the private industry and from other communities and NGOs will go a very long way towards establishing more of these sites, establishing other opportunities for this to grow as an industry, and also more partnership with private industry. I'm aware that Carib Cement was very integral in supporting the community to establish and develop the space so that it is safe, so that it can be utilized in a way for tourism and meets a lot of the standards that you'd expect in the 21st century. It is a pleasure for our community to also have access to these sites. So far, we have done traditional prayer runs. We have had rituals of offerings and Thanksgiving done at the Atabey site. And we're looking forward to developing more of these ceremonies, these rituals, these honoring of spaces, to open it up to the wider diaspora, to open it up to Jamaica, so that other people that share Taino ancestry or have interest in these sites can go to a space where it is not just a space that is relinquished to ancestry and the past, but is being used in the present, being a part of day-to-day life. And that is what I believe is integral at this point in time, to take a lot of this knowledge into the future for future generations and grounding it in the spaces and traditions that we have grown to love and cherish. So, hahom and thank you.
My name is Cleo Bell Lewis, and I am the former head of community outreach with the Caribbean Cement Company in Jamaica. And Carib Cement is part of the CEMEX group. CEMEX is a global building materials company which is based in more than 52 countries. I must give this disclaimer that I am no longer with the company, and I am speaking here as one who is familiar with the project, but not in this moment and instance as a representative of the company. But I'm very proud of the contribution, and the company continues to be to establishing the Woodside Ancestral Gardens. Now, at the time of this whole thing came to be, and is a wonderful example of partnership with the private sector to preserve and promote and to help communities grow. Now, this was conceptualized in 2019 by the general manager of Carib Cement, who wanted to have a nationwide competition among communities. Now, the company has a very strong social responsibility program and is very committed and mindful of their social impact. And usually based on the operating guidelines for outreach activities, the company is very selective and engages mainly with communities which are close to the plants in which, where they operate. In this instance though, the then general manager decided to, and he was someone who had been with CEMEX for a long time and from Panama, but saw the needs in Jamaica and wanted to find a way to, within the company structure, expand the reach and impact of Carib Cement throughout the island. And the way he thought of this was by way of a competition. I conceptualized a competition along with the other colleagues in the company, and decided to invite communities across the island to submit a proposal for a development project valued at Jamaican $5 million. At this time, based on the FX rate, that $5 million is approximately USD $35,000. And the company received 46 entries from 11 parishes across the country. And that was quite significant for a number of reasons, because among the guidelines, in terms of structure in the competition, we decided to align the goals in a way that would be beneficial to the government of Jamaica through the Social Development Commission. The Social Development Commission is a government agency, which is a subset or a part of the Ministry of Local Government. And part of its mandate is to strengthen communities by promoting and encouraging formalization of community groups and citizens associations. So part of the requirements which we embedded within the competition's rules was that communities should be formalized and registered. And I'm pleased to say that one of the outcomes was the formalization and registration of community groups which had not yet been. So that helped the Social Development Commission reach its objective, or contributed to its objective. And from the 46 entries, a panel of employees within the organization, men, women, seasoned employees, and young new employees, as well as an external expert on social impact who had worked in another sector, but with deep engagement in community matters, sat as judges to review and to make the selections, which was supported later on by interviews of the finalists. In the end, the Woodside Community Action Group won for a number of reasons, including one, all the ducks were in their row in that they met all the requirements of the competition, including having approval from the local authorities to do construction and building and improvement work in the community, registration with the Social Development Commission. We had also asked for signatures of 50 community members who would demonstrate that there was wide consensus about making any changes to the community. We have to be responsible in everything we do. So although one person or two may think an idea is good, it has to demonstrably benefit the entire community, and the community would need to demonstrate ownership and a stake. And we found that there was such a strong and deep element of governance and responsibility within the Woodside group that we felt confident that an investment in that community would not go to waste. Right now, there were other strong communities, but you know, there would have been issues with maintenance of the area which they wanted to develop, ownership, but we found none of that with the Woodside Community Action Group. So based on the plans that they had, and you'll hear more about that, our group of internal experts, including engineers with the company, made several visits and supervised the development of the project, which included using concrete. Now, just to say, one of the special elements of this for me looking on is that given the age and the depth of the history of this particular area of the country, it's interesting that how many years later, a partnership would be formed with the country's sole cement manufacturing company. And understand that cement is made from limestone. Jamaica is built on limestone. We're made of limestone. So from our natural resources, from the dust and the bellies of the earth, we're able to give back to this sacred space. So that was a very meaningful and rich contribution. So all the different aspects of the development in terms of a path made of concrete, seating, improving safety by way of borders and barriers and walls, reconstructing a Taino residence, creating, providing a water tank, you know, some additional things, really was a product of the expertise of members of the company and the construction company who were brought on. But it was 100% at the direction and the support and the inclusion and the guidance of the members of the community, who were very clear about what this space was meant to look like. Because we also had to bear in mind not interfering too much, not in fact at all, with the natural habitat, not changing the space, right? And respecting and ensuring and preserving the elements that have been there for centuries, right? And while we had our engineering experts, it was the guidance of the people of the community who understand the boundaries and who understood what needed to be protected, who were there every day, every minute that the work crew was there, who ensured that this project was done successfully. So the company, Caribbean Cement Company, a member of the CEMEX group, has done work across Jamaica with communities, but mainly in creating concrete roads, especially in rural areas, to get that access, to improve access to farmers and children going to school, transportation. But this was a unique project which has continued to be very meaningful to the company. And really, we are very proud of how the community has embraced it and continue to preserve the area. And we understand that it's just one part of contribution to this long, meaningful history of this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentations. And just maybe in summary, the points that we're raising here would be surrounding to several things. One, stakeholder participation is critical. Internal stakeholders from the community, external stakeholders from both the academic and the private sector are critical for participation in the work of any form of heritage tourism. The other thing that we have seen so far is there is a real need for us to explore sacred tourism outside of merely tokenistic responses are looking at it. And look at our cacique and other aspects of our Taino heritage is important for us in the Caribbean. Jamaica has had a long history of Taino participation and heritage. We can look at that. We should look at that. The other thing that we've seen is that the importance of keeping the information flow with both the internal participants and the external participants to create this type of trust and collaboration that allows for this investment and sustainability. One of the things we're also recognizing is that if our corporate partners think that this is something that will improve their worth, they will participate in this. So I'd like to thank you very much for participating in this. The other thing that we have seen, especially emerging out of research just done, is that there are networks of organizations across the country who can and are involved in different aspects of heritage preservation and would love partnerships. So I'd just like to thank you very much for listening to the panel and ask if there are any other questions or comments that you would like to raise, and we would be happy to respond to them. Have yourself a wonderful day. So thank you very much for listening, and it has been really good hearing all that you have come up with. I'd just like to raise maybe several things coming out of the presentation. First and foremost, it's important that we understand and acknowledge the Caribbean as one of these spaces of joining together. The Tainos were here before, and the different Caribbean peoples were here before, and the other people who came up and who have been here. I'd just like to ask if there are any questions, and also we'll do a round of discussions from the respective panelists as we go through. So any questions? There was one question that was asked about, it's something like this: who is the profile for visitors to the sacred space? Dr. Brodber is on, but I must apologize, her video would be weak. But maybe Dr. Brodber would want to raise an answer, and then I could raise some other answers based upon research that we've been doing. Is it possible? Dr. B, you want to answer, or you want me to start? Oh, by the way, Dr. Erna Brodber, Professor Erna Brodber is the person. Whenever any one of us want to speak about somebody who's knowledgeable of community history and about things about how it is that we have both studied and helped to carry this history, we forward into this generation and forward into the future with knowledge. Dr. B is that big guango tree. That big, that big guango tree, or that big tree in the middle of the community. She's that big guango tree that provides shade that we all sit around and learn from. So there are other projects like this. There are several projects in Jamaica that are dealing with community heritage and community history. One of the things that we are finding out is that more and more communities are seeking in their own way to preserve their own knowledge. So you can talk about, for example, the different Maroon communities across Suriname, across Jamaica, the Kalinaga community in Dominica, in St. Lucia, that are doing the same thing in terms of preserving their heritage. The Borinquans community in Puerto Rico is also preserving their heritage in different ways. I think one of the things, and this now I could speak about research that has been done through the University of the West Indies Center for Entrepreneurial Thinking and Practice and the University of Liverpool, is that one of the things that is needed is more connections between this and also projects that are happening in the European space and also within the African space about preserving this. The Cassie Kalan, there's a question here. Do you know of any other projects in the Caribbean that are combining Amerindian and African heritage? Do you want to bring in that one?
Yes, thank you, brother. Thank you. All right, right now there is organization taking place for a gathering at Waitukubuli that's the indigenous name for Dominica. It's a Maroon gathering, and there they are including indigenous individuals, people of African ancestry, people that identify as Maroon, to come together and to have discussions about these things, about the shared history, about understanding their place and their role in the development of their nations, and to work together and support each other on projects similar to what we're speaking about here in this space. So there really is a resurgence or a reformatting of how we view community tourism and the narrative that we're using as we look on our communities, we look on our people, and we define ourselves. So yes, these things are taking place. There's a gathering taking place. I'll get the information and I can share it and post it here as relates to this Maroon gathering with different indigenous peoples gathering in Dominica and people that identify as Maroons from Maroon communities from as far as Trinidad, people in Florida, Gula Geechee people, Seminole people, individuals representing Jamaica and all of the other islands.
Okay. Cleo, there's a question that is emerging about partnerships with let's call them non-academic and non-traditional partners in the economics and social sphere. Would you want to speak about what are some of the areas of challenge and also some of the areas of interest that support this type of collaboration and how we can learn in doing this some more?
The root of opportunities has to do with common interests and objectives. And where a company operates in any environment, they have a responsibility to that environment.
Yes.
And there are guidelines. There's even an ISO standard on social responsibility, but there are also regulatory and other guidelines that govern how businesses operate. Now, in the case of the Caribbean Cement Company, and once again, I am previously the head of corporate communications. I'm no longer with the company, but all Jamaicans can be very proud of Carib Cement. In the case of the Caribbean Cement Company, being a mining and manufacturing company, it's heavily regulated, but it also has, through regulation and through the people, a deep sense of social consciousness. It understands that it is taken from the earth, so giving back to restore in various ways is a requirement. So using that example, and the communities around it are very mindful of the role of the company and have very high standards, expectations, and demands. So in answering the question, I think the lesson is really for communities to take a look at the businesses which operate in their environment. What is important to the communities and how can they engage the businesses, calling on their responsibility to give back, to contribute, to replenish, and developing common interests, common partnerships, and engaging in a way that respects that, you know, business is there to operate for profit, but it also has a conscience. So the community can develop the capacity to the conscience of the business, to be relevant to the business and to help the business meet its objectives. So in my case, or in the case of Carib Cement, my former boss threw a challenge. We usually, as I said before, do projects within communities, specifically around the plants. He said, listen, let's go island-wide. And I developed the framework. Once again, there had to be responsibility from both my side, from the company, and from the communities. They had to meet regulatory requirements for registration as a community, etc. So there are learnings from this, and I think lots of opportunities for communities to push for this kind of access to resources for development.
Okay, that brings us in this present context. We're speaking about the Sustainable Development Goals. We're speaking about the going on COP26 now, because we're recognizing that the importance of community groups, indigenous peoples, and people who are close to the earth to take care of the earth, because extractive resources will go, but the resources of the people will continue, and how the people have over the time forwarded and learned and built things will work for the better. There's a question that has come up again about what do the particular visitor experience at Woodside consist of. I would like to, first I can speak about Woodside as somebody who, I grew up some miles away from there. So from a personal standpoint, walking into Woodside is like walking into this place that feels like home. There's a stillness and quietness that you feel. There's this type of, when you sit at Daddy Rock, you feel home. When you walk to the Atabey site, you feel just a stillness of belong. There's no other word to bring it. But I'd like to bring this across now in some way. I ask Auntie Carolyn, and I call her Auntie Carolyn because Auntie Carolyn now will speak about what aspect of this belong that we talk about, which is sharing it with the other parts and building this future together. Auntie Carolyn. Oh, I'm sorry about the breakups and things.
Experiencing some technical challenges,
So,
internet-based really.
So let me tell you about what is happening in terms of at the site. We have a child and community space that we use now for community engagement and every end amount of a thing called picnic sitting. Now, picnic sitting is this one time when children from the community, but also families come together and we tell stories, we talk, we play a ring game, we learn history, but the history is a lived heritage. It's not something that happened years ago. But even more interestingly, because it's a rural community like this, we can come and look at the wall, a wall of honor, and there you can see the name of your grandparents because there are names that still retain or redound. There's somebody whose name is Kevin Brown, and you look and say, but that's my grandfather's name. But it's not his grandfather's name, it's his grandfather's grandfather, great-grandfather. And these names stay. But it's not just the names that stay too. When you teach children that they belong to somewhere, they keep it and preserve it. When not only do you teach them that their names are important, you teach them that, look here, that site that we call Atabey was sacred, not just to our people, but also to the ancestors that were there. They understand this community and continuity. When you teach them that the Atabey is preserved by now we'll talk about the silk cotton tree. I will talk about the water purification and preservation. They understand this. And when you tell them that, look here, up on the hill there, that used to be something that used to be first a slave master place, but then we have taken it and we have recrafted it into something that is important for us. They understand the importance of them in it. But even more, which is also very important now, when others come from abroad or other places, you teach them that, look here, this method is important in your space too. So you go back to where you're from and help to learn and unlearn, because there are some parts of this that we are unlearning and trying to build back this knowledge of ourselves out of. And this is a very important thing because we're recognizing that the cycle has been broken several times over. There are persons who still never understood from history where things are. So living museums like what we are as a community and living heritage sites that as we are in the sacred space is very important because we understand that there's this connection to the several planes that we work with. I hope I'm making sense. Anybody have questions now? Can I help out with that?
I'm sorry, not to interrupt, but because of the internet challenges, I have Carolyn and Dr. Brodber on my phone, and I can attempt to hold the phone close to the laptop so she can answer the question. So if you would like to ask the question again, let's see how well this works.
Okay, so Dr. B, the question was asked. You mentioned earlier that some visitors come from as far away to trace their family roots. What does these particular visitor experiences consist of? Tell us about the visitor experience, Dr. B, or Auntie Carolyn.
Okay, the visitor experience is varied and actually can be modified depending on the interest of the visitors. So those who come for family history, well, there's a tour, there's an existing tour, and that would have mostly historical information about the various locations. And then for those people who are, if there are people who are tracing family history, then there is the information in two publications by Dr. Brodber, the pamphlet on the village, and then the book, Woodside Poetry Grove, from which the names on the wall came, and there would therefore be information also attached to those names. But we are also doing, there's a variety of things. We're also doing things like having, remember the Cacique mentioned ceremonies. We're also doing things like having, since January this year, We've been doing a monthly picnic. We're trying to do a monthly picnicing event where we're doing gatherings with children and various activities to hopefully build engagement and consciousness and so on. There are people who come from abroad, and depending on what they're studying, the information can be shaped and directed at their interest. Some people are students of literature, some people are students of history, some of them are doing natural environment and that sort of thing. When there was Emancipation Summer School, there was a range of things, including craft and planting and various things. They've had people visit and stay with residents and therefore go and visit their farming plots and so on and reap with them. So there's a whole sort of range of different kinds of activities that can happen centered around the heritage site.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Auntie Carolyn. And I just want to bring in though that it's not all just rosy though. Ownership and continuity is a very big challenge for us. So, for example, I'll just raise one thing that is happening. We battle with predator larceny, we battle with just destruction, we battle with other things like that, when persons come and in the meat of the matter and in the present situation, damage, deface, or destroy our activities or our things. There is sometimes the things that we put up are misunderstood. Sometimes persons feel like it is not important to them. There's this type of ownership that we have to be consistently building. So it's not just the external partners that we're looking towards engaging. It is the continuous engagement of the internal partners within the community to ensure that they know that this is for their future. Kasik, I see you raised that point. You want to bring in something there?
Yes, brother. You know, we can't talk about sacred tourism without talking about healing. And we have to be mindful the more that we're going to the history of our people of color throughout the Caribbean, there will be that aspect of trauma. And that is why these rituals, that is why picnicing and all of these other aspects are important, because we're anchoring our youth. We're giving them grounding and foundation. We're connecting them to their elders. We're giving them stories, true life stories on how we were able to cope. Daddy Rock as a space of gathering, a space of healing, of discussion, so that they know that this is your therapy. Look towards picnicing. I've seen, I haven't been able to participate in any of those yet, but I've seen the adults enjoying themselves and acting and dramatization and this fun and merriment, ring games, all of these things that helped us to move forward. Right? Ancestral Garden has their work days where community members can come and know that activities are taking place so that you feel like you're a part, you're creating a legacy as well. It is not just retelling the stories of the past, but contributing as a part of the story of the community. You know, it is really a beautiful thing, and it is something that, you know, it's, as he said, it's not this utopia, it is work. And everyone can create this in their communities. It takes that effort of someone to learn. And that is why we call her Mojito Brodber. You know, that's Elder in Taino, right? So many people have stepped forward from the community saying, yes, we have Arawak Island, Arawak ancestry. Yes, we have Taino ancestry. We want to learn more about this. And we can say you are already in the place that you need to be, right? We can say on this platform that we've dedicated time in March during the spring equinox and September during the equinox in the fall to do ceremonies there and gatherings and to speak more about the traditional ancestral stories of the site. So what was Woodside to the Taino people? Who was Atabey to the Taino people? What was farming like back then? So that they can create those connections, because what is happening in the resurgence, and just touching on this briefly, what is happening in the Taino resurgence in the Caribbean is there's this tendency to skip through slavery to the 1400s and want to claim an identity of pre-colonization. And the reality is, the fact that we are here, the fact that our elders are here, we had the opportunity to speak with Elder Brother who also has Taino ancestry. That means that everything that has taken place is a part of our history. It is a part of who we are. So the concept of spaces infusing Amerindian and African heritage, we are those spaces. We are living it. We've gone through these things. We make bame, we know we use hammocks, we grow tobacco. All of that is a part of who we are.
Living.
And as you said, my brother, it's a reframing of our identity and the concept of who we are as a people and of our communities, and to do that in a holistic way, including as Elder Brodber has spoken about, you know, that therapy for the community. So that is very integral, you know, that has to be stated as a part of the experience, to be a part and to visit a community that has taken on that mantle of healing themselves, of educating themselves. You notice the Woodside Community Development, they have an education committee, right? Not just a neighborhood watch, which most communities on the island would have, but more than that. So you have to put in the work and plant the seeds to develop the type of community that you want for 7 generations now. So thank you for sharing.
That's very good. I'd just like to raise a comment on a broader research that was done through the University of Liverpool that we're a part of, that spoke to 15 different community groups across Jamaica that are doing work of this type. We reached across in Portland, in Manchester, in St. Elizabeth, in Westmoreland, in Hanover, in Trelawney. We are in St. Mary now, but each one of these community spaces have different activities that are working. And it's very important that we speak about the research that is grounded in this, and not just the research that is grounded in them at present, but also some of the gaps that are there. For example, I just realized, I just found out that Dr. B is on, and she would just like to raise another point. And Nana B, would you like to just raise something again, please? I remember we're just using the phone line, so Dr. B, how you go? Clear? So as you get her, just indicate clear, and we will speak on this. So now the research shows that there is also need for more access to the archives, general access. It needs for a deeper, there's interest for deeper sensory and tactile engagement with the material and the artifacts. There's also space for the work of the creative artist in different forms. One of the activities that is done that I find at the high point of my Woodside experience, well, there's 2 things. One is Black Space, and the other is our 1st of August work. 1st of August and Black Space are 2 things that ground you in your continuity as a part of this space. Then there is also the comment that there is also need for policy level engagement. And we recognize that one of the spaces that this would work most importantly is in the curriculum that is taught within the secondary and primary education system across the Caribbean and in Jamaica especially, where there are some gaps, to put it mildly. There are some gaps in the teaching of heritage that we have to look at, and then even more in the curatorial practices, that there's some work that needs to be done there. Another thing that we realized was that there was need for training support. Us having Dr. B as a part of Woodside has given us way more access to knowledge than other persons have. But building partnerships is a very important way of bridging this gap. And there are persons across the Caribbean who are also there willing to offer this type of space. Oh yeah, Carolyn is now a panelist and would like to speak. Auntie Carolyn, the use of drama is very important in our knowledge sharing. Auntie Carolyn, would you like to? Oh, Auntie Carolyn, you're on mute. Auntie Carolyn.
The internet is quite spotty.
Yes.
I am here, but
Yeah.
the sound connection is poor. I am not
We
hearing.
can hear
I'm
you.
hearing to know that my microphone is on.
We're hearing
And
you.
text messaging is gibberish, unfortunately. So, could you repeat what you said before I was here, before I came on?
No, we were just trying to raise some of the gains and some of the gaps that we have in building collaborative strategies for engaging around the sacred space. And I ended that by trying to introduce Auntie Carolyn as a person who utilizes community drama as one of the teaching tools in this area. So Auntie Carolyn, that would be you.
Yes, that is me. And we have so far, well, Woodside actually has a history of doing dramatic production, and most consistently over the last 10, maybe certainly more than 10 years, they've been using it to celebrate emancipation, informed by the research about the people who were on the plantation at that time. And so that happens every Emancipation Day until COVID, of course. But now we're trying to move it into the activities with the picnic, with the children. And I am hoping to be able to do some more translating of what we have on the pages into activities with our bodies.
So another part to this is the sharing that Auntie Carolyn will talk about, is the sharing of the methodology and the sharing of the information that Dr. B has been researching over the years in the building of well, we call it a study group. I am a very slow student in that space, but Auntie Carolyn is very helpful in trying to teach this type of message to other persons who are outside of Woodside. Auntie Carolyn, you want to talk about that too? Because this is another way that we're teaching and building a university outside of the borders.
Is that
the book club?
Is that the reading group?
Yes, the book club.
Okay, but the book club, the book club is not really. It's adjunct. It's not. It's more of it's related to Broad and her work that is related to Woodside per se. But of course, Woodside an integral part of Broadband. So with doing that, we want to do more work with her work and moving her into more minds and hearts. I thought of starting a book club, a reading club, and we've been taking it gently and slowly, just one work per month.
Okay, I think Auntie Carolyn is breaking up a bit. So if we have no more questions from the audience, I'd just like to say thank you very much for
one question, David.
Okay, sorry. Yes.
Expound on Black Space. I think it would be good for them to get a little bit more information on that.
Okay, so Auntie Carolyn, some years ago, there was an invitation to Black Space that I got from Dr Erna. Just a simple email inviting us to sit down for a discussion about where we are as Caribbean people of African descent, of just Caribbean people who wanted to understand and learn more. So Black Space is now that place for discussion, that place of reasoning, that space of understanding, that space of connection. Persons from across the Caribbean and persons from way in the diaspora come sit down, listen, connect, share stories, and also create strategies for engagement. Out of Black space have come discussions with persons from Toronto, from the United Kingdom, from the United States in different ways about what are some of the challenges that people of African descent, of Caribbean descent are facing within their own space, and what are some of the strategies that have been used over time to overcome this. So these type of spaces offer one type of way that we also, believe and reconnect with our ancestors and reconnect with where we belong. Over time, we've recognized the importance of these little things, because these little things build into a larger strategy for us to know that we're a part of something that is important and bigger. And that, in some way, I'd like to use as a segue into our wrap-up. What began as I'd like to just use it as maybe as a personal mission to share the knowledge about her own community. We have now built into a larger space where this community of Woodside has now started to share, and would like to say, showcase a model of how we can engage in providing knowledge for this generation and continuous other generations of a living space, of a living community. We recognize that there are gaps in it, and that these gaps are not just fixed by at the local level, but rather at different levels. We need for business and community participation, but we have strategies for business, for community and academic participation, and other participation that is going across. It is so important that we speak about this generally. And I would like to just say to you that we are a work in progress. We're learning as we go along, and there are some challenges that we face. But it's important that we know that we have time to go. I'd just like to say thank you, and I'll just like to wrap up. And John, would you like to take over, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I can. I know you've been noticing the thread there, and everyone is so moved by this presentation, the power of the work that you all are doing, the commitment to community, to making sure the community is involved in your practice. It's really a model for work other people can be doing really around the globe. So thank you again for this wonderful presentation, for participating in the MAC conference, everybody. We have a little bit of a break, and then you should come back from lunch. I heard Dr. Brodber talk about, we're going to take a picture, so I want the panelists to stay. But for the audience, I heard Dr. Brodber say about coconut custard. Well, we're going into our lunch plenary at 12:45, and we're going to have a cooking demonstration from Chef Peter Ivey, who's also from Jamaica. So make sure you come back and tune in for that, and then for the afternoon sessions as well. Thank you again, everyone. And panelists, please stay on.